Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I want to share something personal with you, something that has changed me deeply. A few months ago, I finished reading a book that I had initially picked up with some skepticism. It's called The Wim Hof Method, and it's written by Wim Hof, a Dutchman nicknamed the Iceman for his extraordinary feats in extreme cold. I have to admit that when I started flipping through the first pages, I thought I was looking at yet another wellness manual full of empty promises. Instead, I found myself underlining sentences, stopping to reflect, and most importantly, putting what I was reading into practice. And the results came real and tangible. The first thing I understood is that our bodies have abilities we've simply forgotten how to use. We live in air-conditioned environments, we bundle up at the slightest hint of cold, we avoid any form of discomfort. But our ancestors lived exposed to the elements, and their bodies knew how to adapt, respond, and react. That ability hasn't disappeared. It's just asleep inside us. This book taught me how to wake it up. The method is based on 3 elements that work together: gradual exposure to cold, a conscious breathing technique, and the mental attitude with which we face challenges. They sound like simple things, and they actually are. But simplicity doesn't mean easy, nor does it mean shallow. I started with cold showers. At first, just 30 seconds at the end of my warm shower. I can tell you that those 30 seconds felt endless. My body rebelled, my mind screamed to stop. But I held on day after day, gradually increasing the time. After a few weeks, I noticed something strange. It wasn't an effort anymore. Actually, I was starting to look forward to that moment of cold. It woke me up completely, gave me an energy that coffee had never given me. But the real discovery was understanding what happens inside us when we expose ourselves to cold. Our blood vessels contain millions of tiny muscles that normally stay lazy because we live in constantly temperature-controlled environments. When cold hits them, they have to work to protect our vital organs. With the practice, they become stronger, more responsive. The heart works less hard, circulation improves, and that feeling of well-being you get after a cold shower isn't just psychological. It's the result of real physiological processes. Then there's the breathing. Before reading this book, I breathed without thinking about it. Like all of us do, really. But conscious breathing is something completely different. The technique involves cycles of deep breaths, followed by moments of breath holding. The first few times I felt strange, I noticed tingling in my hands and face. But over time, I learned to listen to these sensations instead of fearing them. What struck me most was discovering that through breathing, we can influence systems in our body that we thought were completely automatic. Scientific studies conducted on people who practice this method have shown that it's possible to modulate the body's inflammatory response, influence the immune system, and change blood biochemistry. These aren't theories made up out of thin air. These are results published in serious scientific journals. The third element, mental attitude, is perhaps the one that transformed me the most. Wim Hof says that before facing any challenge, he prepares himself mentally, visualizes what he's about to do, listens to his body to understand if it's ready. This practice of inner listening, which he calls concentration and scientists call interoception, opened up a new world for me. I started paying attention to my body's sensations in a way I had never done before. When I'm stressed, I feel where tension builds up. When I'm anxious, I notice how my breathing changes. And most importantly, I've realized that I can act on these sensations instead of just enduring them passively. There's a story in the book that moved me deeply. Wim Hof lost his wife Olaya to a mental illness that led her to take her own life. He found himself a single father of 4 children with a broken heart. During that time of unbearable pain, cold water became his refuge, not because it erased the pain, but because it gave him moments of relief. When you're immersed in the cold, your mind can't wander to the past or the future. It has to stay in the absolute present. This allowed him to survive and then to heal. The story made me understand that the method wasn't born in a laboratory or from theory. It was born from the human need to survive pain, to find a way to keep going when everything seems impossible. And this gives it an authenticity that books written from behind a desk just can't have. Another lesson I took away is about our limits. How many of the limits we perceive are real and how many are just mental constructions? When I started holding my breath during the exercises, I thought 1 minute was my maximum. Then I reached 2 minutes, then 3. Not because I suddenly became different, but because I discovered that my body could do much more than my mind believed. This applies to so many aspects of life. How many times do we tell ourselves we can't do something, that we're not capable, that it's too hard? Cold, in its brutal simplicity, shows us that many of these limits exist only in our heads. I also really appreciated the non-dogmatic approach of the method. There's no religion behind it, no beliefs you have to accept on faith. There's just the practice and the results that anyone can verify for themselves. As Wim Hof says, there are no non-believers in an ice bath. When you do it, you directly experience what happens. The book also talks about epigenetics, meaning how we can influence the expression of our genes through our actions and lifestyle. This means that the choices we make today aren't just about us, but potentially about future generations as well. It's a thought that brings both responsibility and hope. I want to be clear. I'm not saying this method is a miracle cure for everything. It doesn't replace medicine when you need it. It doesn't magically solve every problem, but it gives us back something we had lost. The awareness that we have an active role in our health and well-being. We're not just passive spectators, waiting for something to go wrong before looking for an outside solution. If what I've shared has made you curious, I really recommend reading the complete book. My personal experience can't do justice to the richness of stories, scientific explanations, and practical instructions it contains. And most importantly, by reading it, you can form your own opinion and decide whether to try it. What I can tell you is that since I started practicing this method, I feel different. More present, more resilient, more connected with my body. Cold showers have become a moment I look forward to. Conscious breathing has become a tool I use when I need to calm down or find energy. And listening to my body has become a daily habit. You don't need to go to Tibet. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need years of study. You just need the willingness to try something new and the consistency to keep going even when it seems difficult at first. Cold, Wim Hof says, is ruthless but fair. It never lies, and it shows you exactly where you are. One thing that really struck me is the concept of becoming general in our own inner war. The book tells about when Wim Hof trained the American Navy SEALs, soldiers already among the most prepared in the world, but the lesson he gave them wasn't about physical strength. It was about inner peace. The real enemies, he explained, are not outside us, but inside. The stress that wears us down, the fears that paralyze us, the imbalances that weaken us. When we learn to govern these inner enemies, we become truly free. Then there's the topic of age, which is particularly close to my heart. We live in a society that considers aging as inevitable decline. But Wim Hof, at over 60 years old, continues to set records and says he feels young. Not because he denies the reality of passing time, but because he refuses to accept limits that others consider inevitable. This made me think about how many of our expectations about aging are self-fulfilling prophecies. Another teaching is about our relationship with pleasure. Wim Hof isn't an ascetic who deprives himself of everything. In the book, he talks about enjoying a beer before and after setting a cold record. The message is clear. We don't have to become Puritans to feel good. Life is meant to be lived with joy, and the method isn't about depriving us of pleasures, but about giving us more energy to enjoy them. Finally, I want to tell you about the deeper dimension I found in this book. Wim Hof studied yoga, read Eastern sacred texts, searched for years for answers in spiritual traditions, but his true enlightenment came in the cold, directly and immediately, not through others' words, but through the experience of his own body. This taught me that the most authentic knowledge doesn't come from books, but from practice. Books, including the one I'm talking about today, are just maps. The territory is us, with our body, our breath, our mind. This episode has also come to an end. We hope you enjoyed the topic, and we look forward to seeing you soon for another topic that can help all of us improve our lives.